The year two Will Smith breakout is coming.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker at the Reef, also the co-host of Locked On NHL. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen, proudly part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. If you want to be an everydayer, all you have to do is just follow along wherever you get podcasts, or you can watch on YouTube as well. And today we're going to be discussing Will Smith. So we're going to be looking at his rookie season, highlighting especially that second half of the year. Then we're going to be looking at other players who are in similar situations as Will Smith, guys who played 1 year in the NCAA before jumping over to the NHL, and how that year two went for them. And then determine what type of jump should we expect from Will Smith, and why I think, spoiler, it's probably going to be a pretty sizable jump for Smith. So before we get to all that, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. All right. Mr. Will Smith, who after much hullabaloo last offseason, signed his ELC, came over, played full season in the NHL this year. I know, remember this time last year we were talking about, does Will Smith play in the AHL? Like, what's kind of the plan for Will Smith? If you remember, also, the Sharks very much kept the training wheels on Will Smith the first half of the season, as they did not have him play back-to-backs. They gave him development days to continue to kind of get used to playing in the NHL, give him some time off. Also continue to work on, gaining muscle and preparing it. A lot of people didn't like how the way the Sharks handled that. Will Smith had himself a pretty good season. We utilized kind of that January 20th game against the Boston Bruins as kind of like a big turning point in Will Smith and his development, right? For a player who really took off the second half of the year for the San Jose Sharks, as he earned more ice time and felt more comfortable, and again, really got used to playing in the NHL. So let's look at how Smith played this year, and of course, kind of focused in on that second half of the season. So Will Smith, who, again, 19, he just turned 20. So he's 20 years old. He'll be 20 in this upcoming season. He played 74 games last year. Again, missed, those 8 games because of developments, et cetera. Like, it wasn't really injury. It was more of just, kind of keeping the training wheels on him. Ended up with 18 goals, 27 assists, with 127 shots on goal, while playing 1551 average time on ice, 46.92% to Corsi for. So when he was on the ice, the Sharks took 46.92% of the shot attempts. Goals for 48.94. So when he was on the ice, the Sharks scored 48.94% of the even strength goals. That's 5-on-5. Looking at his evolving hockey card, playing just below first line minutes, which is at 5-on-5, which is what you'd expect for Smith. 26th percentile overall player, again, 19-year-old season, 70th percentile offensively, 3 percentile defensively. That's always been Will Smith's kind of calling card, is his offense, right? His offense is so good that it's going to make up for the defensive lapses. And we saw the defense, I think, get better as the season went on, but still, it's not Will Smith's calling card is to be a kind of shutdown, sulky type of defenseman. He is going to drive offense, and he did that very well at a young age. Goals above replacement, expected goals above replacement, right in line for kind of, in line, where it wasn't like he's just scoring a bunch of goals, but actually producing expected goals, where he was, wasn't scoring goals, even though he was producing a lot of expected goals, both kind of right in line with what you would expect for him. So looking at his advanced hockey stat card from JFresh, 34th percentile player, 83 percentile offensively, 3 percentile defensively, 7 percentile on the power play. Finishing good, goals good, first assist, like creating those high end, beautiful assist. Like that's what he did very well. Played against solid competition, had pretty good teammates as well. So, and kind of looking at his utilization, average top 6 two-way forward, where he faced good competition, but he also got a fair amount of offensive zone starts, which is what you would kind of expect for Will Smith. So, and forgot his all 3 zones card. Kind of what you saw from, not anywhere near from the Celebrini one, where it's just all bright blue, but some of the same kind of big areas of like the boss retrievals per 60 and, kind of issues there. And that's mostly because of just trying to do too much, basically. He did a very good job of, again, creating those shots off of passes per 60. So kind of creating offense for other players, creating those one-timers, like high-end one-timers. He did a very good job of doing that. And that's what we saw from Will Smith, right? Is how often would he create something for somebody else? And of course, he scored a fair amount of goals as well, too, last year as a 19-year-old in the NHL. So I think, though, if you really focus on the second half of the season where he kind of gained his confidence and became a, bigger part of the Sharks and what they did, again, that kind of January 20th. So the second half of the season, the last 3 months of the year, he was in that time, he's played 34 games. He had 12 goals, 18 assists for 30 points. So almost a point per game player while playing almost 1740 a night. Again, he was a year average at just under 16 minutes. So the second half of the season really was starting to eat up some more ice time. It's kind of crazy. Look at some of the names that he outproduced in that. Like, he had the exact same stat line as Matty Beniers, despite Michkov playing one more game than him. Also, Will Smith had a positive plus minus. If you're into plus minus, I don't really care about plus minus, but just wanted to say he had one less point than Macklin Celebrini in the same amount of time. And again, Celebrini's playing 20 minutes a night. You look at, Matthew Nyes had the same amount of points as Matthew Nyes, had more points than Leo Carlson, and Carlson played 2 more games than him, had more points than Dylan Larkin, more points than Mark Stone, more points than Tomas Hertl, more points than Cole Caulfield, more points than Jaroslav Slavkovsky, all in the same time span, right? And again, I'm not putting Will Smith above any of these players right now. More points than Connor Bedard. But it's just, I really want to emphasize how great of a second half Will Smith had for the San Jose Sharks. And if that's the Will Smith we're getting going forward, that's going to be a huge part of what the Sharks are trying to build, right? With Celebrini and Smith and Eklund and Misa and et cetera, et cetera. Will Smith being basically a point per game player would really, help solidify whatever the Sharks decide to do. If it's, Smith on the second line, if it's Smith with Celebrini, that really just solidify as a foundational player. 2, is going to make Macklin Celebrini's life a lot easier because you have a running mate in Will Smith who can play and produce just as much as you can. You need, right? You can't just have one guy out there. And I think Will Smith is well on his way, but just that confidence, right? For a player to kind of, not just, right. It's one thing to have a week of it of cool, scoring for a week, playing really well this week. And then you kind of have a down week, but 34 games, 3 months of it, basically, that's a nice big sample size. And yes, I know there was some time off there with the world, with the 4 nations face off, etc. But that's still a legitimate sample size for a guy who's played 74 games. 34 of them, you were almost a point per game player. So massive steps from Will Smith. And again, kind of like the same thing with Celebrini, right? Smith's not going to have the same summer where, you're playing in the rookie face-off. You're going to be playing in rookie camp. You're going to have to play we kind of know Will Smith's position on the team. And yes, while he's going to be transitioning to a center now, right, he's kind of solidified as an NHL player, and you believe he's going to be an NHL player going forward. So what should we kind of expect from Will Smith? And what if other players who were kind of in the same position, top end picks, all the guys we're looking at were top 5 picks, played 1 year at college, and then went to the NHL? How did they perform in their second year? So we're going to be looking at Matty Beniers, Kent Johnson, Logan Cooley, and Adam Fantilli. And what can we kind of expect to see after reviewing these guys and their performances in the second season? So we're going to start looking at these guys here in just 1 second. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can be. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. The great thing about it is if maybe you and your partner, you're working towards both personal goals and kind of combined goals, right? Maybe you're trying to buy a house, maybe you're trying to buy a car, just trying to plan your next big adventure. With Monarch Money, you can kind of work on your own personal goals, but also work towards shared goals as well. They make it super easy to do. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right, before we continue, do of course want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. If you haven't yet, perfect time to subscribe. We have more interviews coming this week, so make sure you're following along for that. And of course, if you missed last week, Joshua Ravensbergen joined the show. Great conversation with him. Always fun to talk with goalies because they're just a little bit different, dude. So plus we'll continue to kind of get to know some of these top end draft picks from the San Jose Sharks. So make sure you guys are following along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. All right. So 4 guys kind of over the last couple seasons who, again, played a year of college and then went to the NHL. Right, and most of these guys played, other than Adam Fantilli, most of these guys got drafted, played a year of school, and then went to the NHL after that. Fantilli's the only one who made the jump straight to the NHL after being drafted, but he had played a full season in college before that. So let's start out with we're going to go kind of in chronological order of their draft and draft year. So we're going to start out with Matty Beniers. So Matty Beniers, of course, was taken second overall way back in the feels like way back, but way back in the 2021 draft, second overall by the Seattle Kraken. Spent a year at Michigan where he scored. He had 2 years at Michigan. My bad. But still, year at Michigan after his draft year, 37 games, 20 goals, 23 assists, 43 points. Played a small amount of games in the NHL that year. In 10 games, he had 9 points before making a full season in the NHL. So we're going to kind of count that 10 game sample size with, as part, like we're not really going to count that, right? We're going to be looking at full years here. So the Kraken, first season with the Kraken, right? He played 80 games, had 24 goals, 33 assists, 57 points, was the rookie of the year, won the Calder that year. Felt like Matty Beniers was going to be this massive, massive piece, right? And I still think Matty Beniers is going to be really good. But the second season, you definitely saw a drop in production. So looking at Beniers that second season, 77 games, 15 goals, 22 assists, 133 shots on goal. Played 17:58 average time on ice, so 18 minutes a game. 50.98% Corsi for, 50% goals for during that time. While the raw counting stats were definitely dropped, Kind of going from 24 goals to 15, 33 assists to 22. He played relatively the same amount of time on ice, like literally 10 seconds. Or actually, no, he played a big, almost a minute more that season as he kind of continued to gain more responsibilities. But the Kraken, if you remember, they took a big dive, right? His rookie year, right? They made the playoffs. Everything was great. Then that next year, right? They just weren't the same team. They've been kind of in that boat as a team, just trying to figure things out here over the last couple seasons. So, and they just didn't have the same scoring production that they did from other players as well. So, Beniers, who is one thing though, keep in mind, Beniers full on center, has been a center since day one. Will Smith, right, is going to be making that transition to center, at least for this year, and we'll kind of see what goes on with the Misa Smith, who kind of takes that 2C job long term. But the thought is that Will Smith is going to be playing center this year. We know, of course, Matty Beniers stepped in, has been a center, kind of a second line center to begin with, and then has now kind of taken over the first line center position. So interesting to see that his kind of production drop a little bit that second season. But you can also, again, point to a team like the Kraken, who I think we can safely say, right, way outproduced expectations year 2 and then kind of fell back to the pack in year 3. And we know the Sharks didn't outproduce expectations last year, and we're hoping to see kind of that slow build from that slow build from them. So another guy who not a center, but a top 5 winger, also from that same draft, is Kent Johnson. Kent Johnson, who just played 2 years. He played 2 years at Michigan. So again, a little bit different, but still played 2 years at Michigan in his final season. He had 32 games played, 8 goals, 29 assists for 37 points. Also got that 9-game sample size with the Blue Jackets at the end of the 21-22 season before making the jump full-time to the NHL in the 22-23 season. At 22-23 season, he played 79 games, 16 goals, 24 assists for 40 points. So pretty solid production again that first season. Second year was definitely not the season you would expect. He only played 42 games in the NHL. He also played 10 games in the AHL with the Cleveland Monsters, where he just dominated. He had 5 goals, 10 assists for 15 points in those 10 games. And I think, they realized he's just needed to play in the NHL, basically. But 42 games in the NHL had just not the same kind of production that you would hope for, right? 6 goals, 10 assists with only 62 shots on goal while playing 13:33 average time on ice, 48.02 Corsi for, 53.85% goals for. So again, just a guy who really couldn't establish himself as a full-time NHL player that second season. So this one is, I think, the cautious case. If things go bad for Will Smith, where you do have that type of step down type of production from him, and I think you would easily point to Kent Johnson's second year. Last year, Kent Johnson bounced back with 57 points in 68 games, including 24 goals, and saw his ice time jump from 13:33 to 17:18 and became a top 6 player for Columbus as they went on way above expectations last year. So I do think, though, with Columbus, right, and that was a team that struggled that 23-24 season, and Kent Johnson kind of not taking that next step was a big reason why. But you saw year 3 for Kent Johnson become a different player. And also, I mean, Kent Johnson, much like Will Smith, known for his offense, not much known for his defense there. And right, you knew with Kent Johnson, he's going to be a kind of human joystick type of player, but always was a winger, while Will Smith, center at heart, center by trade. And we're going to see what happens with Will Smith there. So both those players kind of a little bit of a cautious, in that second season, despite having good rookie campaigns. We're going to look at Cooley and Fantilli, who both made big jumps in year 2, and especially Cooley, who I think Smith might be the closest kind out of all these guys to kind of look at. So, yeah, we'll get to that here in just 1 second. All right, before we finish up, do of course want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. When you're done with this episode, go check out Locked On NHL. While we're only down to 3 episodes a week now, we're still pumping out 5 a week over at Locked On NHL, where we're covering the biggest stories throughout the season, plus starting to get you ready for the upcoming season with local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. Okay, Logan Cooley, and this is the one, right? Because I think there's a lot of similarities, and Cooley, I think, it's safe to say, is a better, well-rounded player, especially kind of coming out of college, but play style, kind of situations. This one, I think, is the one where you probably kind of perk your ears up a little bit. So, Logan Cooley, USNDTP, right, in his draft year, goes to play at University of Minnesota, where he has a pretty solid, very good time there. 39 games, has 22 goals, 38 assists, 60 points during that time. Again, remember, Will Smith put up 70 points in 41 games. So, pretty similar, you would say, at least when it came to production wise, right? And then first full season with the Coyotes as a rookie, played 82 games, 20 goals, 24 assists for 44 points. Will Smith again this year for the Sharks, 74 games, 18 assists, 18 goals, 27 assists, 45 points, right? And we know the Sharks, not a good team, not that the Coyotes, right? Not the best team, but maybe like a little bit of ahead of where the Sharks, easily to say, a little bit ahead of where the Sharks are. But this next season, last year is, now the Utah Mammoth, as they make their, transition, you saw Cooley really take a big jump. 75 games this year, 25 goals, 30 assists, 158 shots on goal, playing 1752 average time on ice. 50.39% Corsi for, 57.45% goals for. Very similar in the started kind of on the wing, and then by the end of the season he was playing center, and then this last year was playing center kind of full time for Utah. Right, even seeing the ice team for the ice time, for Cooley, where 1549 the first year, very similar to Will Smith, jumped up to almost 18 minutes this last year, right? As he continued to kind of gain more confidence and kind of be the guy for Utah. So I think if you're looking for the most, the one that you're kind of expecting, I think the Cooley one, right? And you saw Utah make a big jump this year, right? And they added some big pieces on the blue line, and you're seeing some of their young players naturally grow. I don't think the Sharks are going to be like playoff caliber. I do think the Sharks still, I know there's people that are pessimistic. Maybe I'm being a little optimistic, but there is going to be a jump in play with Askarov, and I think with some of the defensive pieces on the blue line. And I think this is the template for you of what to kind of expect for year 2 for Will Smith, is that 60 to 70 points, right? Probably about 25 goals. And we saw Will Smith get better and better with the scoring as the year went on. This is the one where I think that you kind of look at the most. So finally, Adam Fantilli, who is in the same draft, right, as Will Smith. Fantilli, who went the pick right before Will Smith. He played 1 year at Michigan. 36 goals, or 36 games, 30 goals, 35 assists, 65 total points during that time. Went and played with the Blue Jackets right after getting drafted. Played 49 games. Remember, he missed a good chunk of time with an injury that season. Had 12 goals, 15 assists, 27 points on a, pretty tough Blue Jackets team. This last year, though, right, as Fantilli really took the reins of this team and kind of earned that 1C spot, and they really kind of took over and became a bigger and bigger piece, you saw the production spike. 82 games, 31 goals, 25 assists, 158 shots on goal, playing 17-29 tonight. Corsi for 46.93%, goals for 54.46% for Fantilli this year. That ice time jumped from, again, 15:43 to about 17 and a half minutes, which is what, much bigger for him. He also kind of played in the started on the wing that rookie year, also played some center as well. This year really solidified himself as a full-time center for the Blue Jackets. So Fantilli, though, I think, much higher floor kind of coming out like in his two-way game, much better than Will Smith's. I think it's very fair to say coming out of Michigan compared to where Will Smith is. But again, out of all these ones, I think the Logan Cooley one is probably the one that you circle, and that's what I think the realistic expectations are for Will Smith, right? And if Smith goes from playing 74 games to 82 games this year, and he's putting up 25 goals and he's putting up 40 assists and gives you 65 points this year, I think that's realistic expectations for Will Smith as he grows into a second line center, right? And I think the Sharks did a good job of getting some veteran guys who can come in and help him, right? And if it's Khrushchev, and I assume it's going to be Jeff Skinner or whomever else they want to put on that, or if it's Eklund on that line, the Sharks now have, with the additions, especially of Khrushchev and Skinner, guys who can be top, at least middle six forwards, right? And we've seen Khrushchev play top line minutes with Bedard. I know some people are really down on Jeff Skinner because he didn't have the greatest season last year with Edmonton, but was kind of asked to take a much reduced role on a much better team. But if you go back to his time with the Sabres, on a very bad team, he can definitely score, right? And the Sharks need more guys who can score. And I think Will Smith is going to, if Smith and Skinner get put together, I think you're going to see a lot of production between those two of Will Smith, right? You go back to what Will Smith's really good at, right? It's creating one-timers and creating assists in high danger areas. Jeff Skinner, noted goal scorer, is good at getting to the front of the paint and banging in goals right there. And I think Smith is going to be able to find him and set him up. And I think Jeff Skinner's still got enough tread on the tires that he's going to be able to put those home. Do I think he has a Tyler Toffoli type of impact? Maybe, maybe not. But I think Jeff Skinner is still good enough where he's going to be able to help Will Smith see that production really increase. So I expect Will Smith to be, right around that 65-point mark, and be that 25 goal scorer for the Sharks. And, if you're kind of trying to rank who scores the most, I assume it's going to be Celebrini. Then you just put 30 goals in for Tyler Toffoli, right? And then, would you be surprised if Will Smith was the third leading goal scorer on the Sharks? Because I wouldn't, right? Maybe Jeff Skinner gets in there, but I think that's probably going to be your third leading goal scorer on the Sharks this year is going to be Will Smith, and I think he's going to have a big season. And we'll see what happens if the center, if he becomes a center long term or not. But I think that's going to be the big question for him is, can he be a center? But I'm not worried about the production. I think the production is going to come. I think you're going to continue to see what we saw in the second half of the season. That was a very confident Will Smith, who's kind of found his role and is going to continue to build off of that. And I think 65 points, that's right where I'm putting the over-under on. So, I expect a big jump for Smith this season. So we'll be back later this week as we continue to dive into some of these Sharks prospects. So make sure you guys are following along wherever you get podcasts. And, of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at My Fry Hole. Until Tuesday night, Bye, friends.